Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for another HRDQ-U webinar. We have a great presentation for you presented by Dr. Lynne Levesque titled Breakthrough Creativity, How to Use Your Talents for More Creative Leadership. Our goal for this webinar is to have you walking away with evidence on how incorporating creativity in your leadership style can accelerate the growth of creative strengths in leaders and on your team. Today you will learn what it means to be creative as a leader and why it's critical to performance, the different ways leaders can be creative, and how the 8 creative talents work on a team. A few things before we get started. My name is Asia, and I will be your host today. In your handouts tab, we do have a handout for you. They are the slides from the presentation, so you can go ahead and download those now from the handout section on your dashboard. Also, we want to see as many questions and comments that you have during the webinar, so please type them into your questions box on your dashboard. Our presenter, Lynn, will answer as many of your questions as she can during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Questions that we can't get to will be answered after the webinar and shared with you in an email next week. So organizations that integrate creativity into their DNA achieve significant benefits, including better team performance, creative problem solving, and strategic decision making. And when it comes to leadership, creativity is key to gaining a competitive advantage in the marketplace. But just as there are multiple styles of intelligence, there are multiple styles of creativity, each producing different yet equally valuable results. Variations in how individuals look at the world, gather information, and respond to challenges all have an impact on creative contributions. That's why self-discovery is an important first step in realizing a leader's creative potential. Lynn is going to walk us through this concept today of creativity, and at the end of the webinar, if you find yourself excited to try this new approach, we have just the product to help you get started. You see here the Breakthrough Creativity Profile. It's designed to provide individuals with an in-depth understanding of their creative talents as well as associated strengths and challenges. Today we are offering a very special 25% off for all of our attendees. More details will be coming at the end of the webinar. All right, so now we can get started. Today we are here with Dr. Lynne Levesque. Lynn is an expert in the field of creativity and leadership with over 20 years of experience consulting, training, and researching. She is the author of Breakthrough Creativity, Achieving Top Performance Using the 8 Creative Talents, as well as numerous articles and Harvard Business School cases for the Harvard Business Review and the Sloan Management Review. Ms. Levesque holds an MBA from the University of California at Berkeley and a doctorate in creativity from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Welcome, Lynn. We are so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Asia, and welcome to all of you who are participating in today's webinar. This is a great way to kick off a new year, and I'm happy to see so many people who have chosen to spend some time exploring my favorite topic, creativity and leadership. This topic is a critical one for all of us for many reasons. To underscore its importance, I'd like to share with you, the results of a recent report from the World Economic Forum, the annual gathering of world political leaders, Fortune 500 CEOs, and leaders of social and civic organizations in Davos, Switzerland. In 2016, organizers asked chief human resources and strategy officers from leading global employers about the skills needed in 2020 to deal with what they call the 4th industrial revolution. As you can see, creativity has moved up in importance from the last report from 10 to 3. In fact, the report says creativity will become one of the top 3 skills workers will need. With the avalanche of new products, new technologies, and new ways of working, workers are going to have to become more creative in order to benefit from these changes. I believe that in truth, creativity, as defined within the Breakthrough Creativity Framework, helps power most of the other skills listed for 2020. To help you understand what I'm talking about, I want to first do a quick overview of the talents and then show how the Breakthrough Creativity Framework can be used not only for identifying your creative strengths, but also for addressing the many challenges of leadership. The focus will primarily be on you as a leader, most broadly defined, but obviously you can use this information with your coaching clients, with programs for developing leaders with your employees, with your teams, and in training sessions to help others identify their creative strengths and realize the power of those strengths for being a more effective leader. The benefits of leadership are vast. There's much to be gained from a leadership perspective from exploring our creative potential, especially if we think of creativity not just as an end, but as a means to many different ends. And those creative ends come in the form of more inventive decisions, strategies, products and solutions, better designs, process improvements, and breakthrough technologies, as well as finding new ways to communicate and manage and motivate employees. Realizing the power of creativity has other benefits as well. Being creative builds self-esteem. With practice, you build confidence in your creativity, and in the process become even more creative, ready to try new things, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Developing your creative potential also strengthens your capacity to be more open, flexible, and resilient. All important skills for dealing with the unstructured, ill-defined, and ambiguous challenges and complexities of our ever-changing world. Creativity can thus provide a foundation that helps leaders be more comfortable with risk, experimentation, and ambiguity. So there's no question that the benefits are far-ranging. The problem is that too often leaders don't get this and these benefits because they don't see themselves as creative or don't know how to become more creative. Too often creativity is seen as magical and mystical and belonging to a select few. Creativity is definitely misunderstood as far as I'm concerned. That's because there is a lot of confusing and conflicting information about creativity, who is creative, what does creativity mean. It's hard to see yourself as creative if you measure yourself against geniuses like Einstein or Edison or Michelangelo. Or you may believe that creativity is only about thinking out of the box or being off the wall, or that it's a right brain thing and you are definitely left brain, whatever that means. Or maybe you took a creativity test, I'm putting that in quote, creativity test, and didn't score very highly. Or you might have been told, as a friend of mine had been, by a teacher that you aren't very creative when you were young, and you carried that through to adulthood. This is a problem. Everyone is being asked to be more creative, to think and do things differently, but if you don't see yourself as creative, you and your organization may be missing its many benefits. So today, we're going to explore creativity, see its power for higher performance as a leader, and then apply this knowledge to leadership development programs and initiatives. But first, let's take the temperature to see where we stand regarding your belief about yourself as a creative leader. Asia is going to open up the poll, and unfortunately, because of technology constraints, you can't see the results as they come in, but I can. So please select just one. Do you believe that you are a very creative leader, somewhat creative, you're not sure, or no, I've never thought of myself as a creative leader? So just select one, please. And I'm looking for the results. There we go. So I'm seeing quite a bit of a variation, but many of you are not sure. Some of you are very sure that you're a very creative leader. Some are somewhat, and there's a few that never thought of themselves as a creative leader. So in my research workshops and classes, I have found that the older the audience, the less they see themselves as creative. The younger, the more creative they believe they are. So I guess we have a mix. Some of you are at least very young at heart. One of the reasons you may not see yourself as creative or aren't sure is that there are so many different theories and approaches to creativity. The breakthrough creativity approach is based on 3 key principles, developed after much research and study. One is the belief that we are all creative. And since this is indeed the case, then we need a definition of creativity that is broad and enough to encompass all the many different ways we can be creative, since, in fact, there is no one best way to be creative. There are a wide variety of ways, and no one way is the ideal or right or best way to be creative. Now, there can be a lot of reasons why you scored yourself the way you did, and one of those has to do with your definition of creativity. Since your definition defines how you look at yourself and others as creative, take a minute to jot down your definition of creativity in the questions box. When you answered the first poll about your own creativity, what definition did you have in mind? Oops. I see thinking outside the box, thinking beyond the obvious, right? Thinking outside the box. A lot of people see that. Able to develop new design new things, come up with uncommon solutions. I like the words novel, uncommon, different, yes, problem-solving solutions, thinking differently. Here's one that I haven't seen before, which is off the wall and being crazy. I actually did have somebody that I interviewed in my research who said that she was not creative, even though she had won many awards as an entrepreneur, because she thought that being creative was being crazy. And here's one that says being weird. Thank you very much. Okay, so as you've heard, there are many varieties of and definitions of creativity, and not all of them are inclusive of the varied ways that you can be creative, or that recognize that we are all creative. We're not all weird, for example. So in this webinar, we'll be using the breakthrough creativity definition that is based on my experience, teaching, and research, including the latest findings from neuroscientists studying the brain and creativity. And that definition is that creativity is the ability to consciously produce different and valuable results. We are not all alike in our creativity, but that's because there are many different creative results. You may not have developed your creativity to the same degree that others have, but it's there. It might be hidden, but it's there, and it can be developed so you can reach higher levels of creativity. Just want to point out a few things about this definition. Results don't have to be tangible. They can be intangible, like creating an open and safe culture where new ideas are welcome, or by creatively resolving conflict, or leading a team to reach creative heights. However, the results do need to be different. That is different from what you've done before. Your results don't have to be original to the world or change the course of business or science or history. Few people are able to do that. There are a few who have been known to produce transformational creativity or creative results or groundbreaking results, like Charles Darwin or Steve Jobs. But for most people, creativity is a bit more down to earth, but still incredibly important. Just being different, however, is not enough. To be considered creative, your results must also be valuable, meaning here that they are useful and appropriate. The results must satisfy the needs of the situation or challenge, which could be your need to express yourself, and you may not always be successful the first time. Being creative often involves learning from mistakes, building on them, and through trial and error, finding an answer. Eventually, the results have to work and solve the problem or challenge. Otherwise, it may end up just being an interesting idea. I use the term conscious because you must know yourself well enough to be able to call up your creativity whenever you need it. Creativity is not a flash in the pan. You need to be conscious about your process. You will notice that this definition might encompass what some people call innovation. I believe that individuals are creative and organizations are innovative, building on the creativity of their employees. In other words, innovation is a group activity or process that organizations can design and benefit from. Creativity is something that each of us has. It's a personal characteristic. Let's go on here, focusing on creativity, and leave any questions that you might have about this definition to the Q&A. We'll have time to answer those at the end if you have any questions. Okay, while this is not meant to be a webinar on leadership, it's important to understand the perspective that I'm coming from when I talk about leadership. I like the model that my colleagues Bob Kaplan and Rob Kaiser have developed. They call it the versatile leader. Their research shows that high-performing leaders have versatility, the ability to flex into different modes, given the context of the situation and the person or the persons that they are dealing with. Effective, highly effective leaders need to be both strategic and operational, although at different times, and they need to be enabling or forceful and directing as well. And yes, this is a little bit like situational leadership, but it's taken up quite a few notches. Now, when you study the creativity, you will find that to be consciously able to produce different and valuable results requires perception and judgment. And that's similar to what Rob and Bob talk about when they talk about versatile leaders. They need to be able to collect data and perceive and then make judgments. Scientists, inventors, and artists, designers, and creative leaders don't just sit around brainstorming ideas. They do something with their ideas. They produce symphonies, novels, paintings, inventions, patents, new organizations, new products, new processes. Creativity requires not only perception and judgment, but also action and reflection. It's about process and product, doing and being. For example, when an artist gets an idea for a painting, he or she has to figure out how to put it on canvas. Then they will paint some of it. Then they step back to reflect on it before painting more. Writers do the same thing. So do scientists, designers, and creative leaders. They reflect and act. They act and reflect. They see and do. Yes, it's all about balance. So if everyone is creative, and creativity requires acting and reflecting, collecting data, and doing something with that information, how do you go about getting in touch with your own creative powers? Well, good news. You're lucky. We're all lucky. We all have creative talents, capabilities, and strengths that allow us to collect data, act and reflect, and then produce creative results and contributions. You just need to identify, perhaps uncover, and then develop these talents, which we're going to do in just a few minutes. But I want to give you just a little bit more background. The creative talents, which I'm going to describe, are built on the work of Carl Jung, Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, who believed that the creative instinct exists in each and every one of us. In observing his patients, Jung came to realize that there are patterns to the way that people look at the world and then make decisions using the data that they see. He determined that there are 4 functions: sensing and intuiting for data collecting, thinking and feeling for decision making, as well as 2 orientations to the world: an orientation to the outer world, or that what he called extroverted, or to the inner world, which he called introverted. The combination produced his 8 psychological types. You may be familiar with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the MBTI, as well as HRDQ's personal style inventory. Both are also based on Jung's work. Jung meant for this typology to be like a compass. It's not meant to put you into a box, or what he called put you into drawers, but to give you direction on your journey toward greater self-awareness and creativity and higher performance as a leader. I want to emphasize that. This is not meant to categorize you or to label you. It's to help you on your journey towards more self-awareness. So when you combine Jung's 8 psychological types with the breakthrough creativity approach, you end up with 8 creative talents, 8 different ways that we can take in and process data. And they are the adventurer, the explorer, the navigator, and visionary for data collecting talents, and the inventor, poet, diplomat, and pilot for the decision-making talents. Now, before we get into the more detailed description of these talents, I just want to point out they're all equally creative. And we have access to all of them. However, they do impact those that we do develop preferences for these talents, and they will impact your creativity differently. They can color how you see data, they can shape how you see problems and make decisions, and they can also fashion how you look at problems, how you solve problems, how you make decisions, and how you lead. The talents need to be seen as tools for greater leadership, not as an end in and of themselves. So, before we get into the detail, I want us to take a moment and think about what are your preferences from the data collecting perspective. Sarah's going to open up Asia is going to open up the poll, and I will then walk through each of the talents. So when you are collecting data and generating ideas, which of the following best describes the way you prefer above all others? You can only pick one. When you're collecting data, when you're looking at the world, when looking for ideas, do you say, let me research facts and details on my own? Do you want to know what, when, where, how, and what's going on? Do you want to generate lots of ideas together? Or do you want to go off and ponder, go for a walk, so that you can focus on your own imagination? So pick just one, please. And we are going to see some of the results as they come in to see if we have a well-balanced crowd or whether we have some who are more predominantly one or the other. All right, so we are seeing that we have a fairly balanced group here, and I'll be addressing each one of those so that you will get a better feel for each one of those talents. If you answered the, sorry, I'm having a bit of challenge here. I'm challenged technically here. Can't seem to get to my the overhead again. Asia?
Yeah, I can see. We can see the screen. I'm going to go ahead and show the adventurer slide. So that's what we're looking at right now.
Sorry, I'm not seeing that. So can you put that on the screen? Or how about if I close out the poll? Sorry. I'm afraid.
You know what?
There we go.
That was that was all my fault. I take the blame. I didn't want to hide those results. I wanted you guys to keep looking at them. So we're back, though.
Okay. Well, that's good. Well, we have to be creative and flexible, and that's what the adventure challenge is all about.
So yeah, we're just showing examples, right?
Exactly. Thank you. So if you tend to be if you tend to be spontaneous, fun-loving, flexible, curious, and enjoy the five senses and see all sorts of details in the shapes and sounds of life and find joy in being on stage, at least some of the time, you probably have a lot of adventurer talent within you. And there were some people who did answer that they have the adventurer talent, they prefer the adventurer talent. Because the process of producing different and valuable results as a highly effective leader involves solving problems and leading innovation, I'm going to address those aspects of each talent as well as its contributions. So when it comes to how do the people with the adventurer talent tend to respond to problems, it comes out in quick responses to crises and in the ability to skillfully handle anything thrown its way. Firefighters, first responders, basketball players, photographers are all examples of individuals who use this talent. This talent will have leaders tend to ask questions about what's happening right now in the present, who, what, when, where, and how. When it comes to innovating, this talent will look at innovation as experimentation and clever improvisation. The leadership style will tend towards operational, as defined in the versatile leader model. It tends to be more focused on the present, the here and now, rather than the future. Now, one of the major contributions that Kaiser and Kaplan have made to the practice of leadership development is an appreciation of overusing your talents as well as underusing the talents or your strengths. So a possible challenge for anyone with this talent is overusing its love of life and enjoyment of solving crises that can cause individuals who favor this talent to get so caught up in the moment that they might forget about getting things done. They also may have a problem with process and undervaluing the importance of process because they rather respond to in the moment. Now, perhaps you like to deal with facts but you prefer to research and collect those facts on your own in a careful, thoughtful, and private way. Then you probably will prefer the navigator talent that likes to look at everything in detail under a microscope, if you will. We call the navigator's talent creativity pragmatic adapter because its creativity comes out in its ability to build on what others have done. This talent's focus on details will provide grounding for a team, ensuring achievement of creative results, a critical component of the creative process and one that is often overlooked. Researchers, impressionist painters, and scientists like Charles Darwin have exhibited use of this talent. Leaders with this talent will tend to ask questions that are practical, concrete, such as what has happened in the past, how did we solve this problem in the past, tend to be more look at innovation from a methodical, incremental point of view. They will apply facts, experience, and research to solving problems and to innovation. Their leadership style will also tend towards the operational, focusing on the details of what needs to be done. And the challenge for individuals who prefer the navigator talent is overusing it, which can cause a leader to be overly cautious about risk, which is usually part of anything creative. Now, perhaps you answered the poll by saying you love to generate ideas with others. If so, your favorite talent is probably the explorer talent, whose creativity comes out as the energetic catalyst that can brainstorm, come up with new ideas at the drop of a hat. This is the talent in people who tend to be called creatives at work, folks who are full of endless possibilities and are all about new ideas, discovery, change, and opportunities. Examples of individuals using this talent include Walt Disney, Virgin Group founder Richard Branson, and some advertising greats like Alex Osborne. This talent will use a sixth sense to address problems from beyond the five senses and will search out all sorts of options and alternatives for the near future by asking, what would happen if? What are the patterns and concepts that we need to understand? How might we? Blue sky type ideas are this talent's middle name, and its leadership style will be more strategic, looking to the future. One of the challenges those with the Explorer talent need to face is that they can usually get projects started, or projects or ventures started, but are often not interested in sticking around to get them implemented, which means that creative results may not always be achieved in a timely fashion. Those with this talents can also run into trouble by ignoring the facts of reality when this talent's strengths are overused. Now, the fourth talent, data collecting talent, is the visionary talent. If you answered the poll by saying you get your best, most inventive ideas when you're off on your own, taking a walk, or in bed, in the bath, or shower, or in the car, for example, then your favorite talent is the visionary talent. The insightful, futuristic creativity of this talent comes out in its ability to integrate knowledge across many different areas, to ask bold questions, and make unusual connections. It can create a counterintuitive vision of the far-off future, like prophets, creators of science fiction like James Cameron or George Lucas, or creative strategic planners. The visionary talent will address problems by asking about long-range objectives and taking a systemic view of them, asking, for example, what does this mean for the long term? What might be the impact? Leaders with this talent will tend to look for long-term breakthrough innovations. This talent, like the Explorer talent, tends to be more strategic in terms of being future-oriented and can cause leaders to sometimes ignore facts and details and fail to bring others along with them while stretching to get the organization to think big. So, did you find a favorite data collecting talent that sounds like you? If not, we will address those in the questions and answers at the end of the session. And you also may find, before we go on to the next poll, you may also find that the older you are, the more mature you are, the more you have developed all the different talents, but you have to admit that you have a preference for one of them. So now let's go on to the decision-making talents. Remember, I said that to be fully creative, you not only need to come up with ideas, but you also have to do something with them. So what is your favorite approach to making decisions, turning creative ideas into action and getting results? Do you want to hear from others to help you make up your mind? Do you want to focus on your own values to guide your decisions? Do you use logic and tend to think out loud? Or do you develop categories in your mind to guide your decisions? You can only pick one, remember. And I know it may be difficult, but that's important that you pick just one, at least for going forward. And you probably ought to be writing your answers down, because unless you're less forgetful than I am. So hopefully we have some voting here, and we can find out whether or not we have a balanced group similar to what we had before, or whether we are well, we have some preferences here that seem to predominate. This is interesting. So let's think about the group today as a team, and I'll get back to that because you tend to have one preference here, and I will try to remember to talk about the challenges as if the audience were a team. Okay, so let's see if we can switch now back to, there we go. So if you picked the that you tend to think out loud to clarify your thinking and decide what to do, you are accessing the pilot talent. This talent, with its analytically strategic creativity, is great at coming up with new designs and plans. This talent comes in very handy for project managers and planners who need to steer a team working on a new project by setting goals and objectives, asking tough questions, and focusing on improvement and getting things accomplished. This talent's ability to analyze, categorize, and organize helps it achieve creative results as new organizational designs and strategies. It will attack problems with logical critique and play devil's advocate. It will look at processes and strategies around innovation, and in doing so may lead from a more directing or forceful point of view. Albert Sloan, who reorganized General Motors over a century ago, was probably using this talent, as was the designer of Management by Objectives. A challenge for individuals favoring this talent is that they can be so eager to get things clearly organized that they are sometimes uncomfortable with the ambiguity that is inherent in innovation and creativity. They want to jump to results, but creativity and innovation often requires experimentation and uncertainty around outcomes. So if you answered that you tend to develop categories in your mind when making decisions, then you probably prefer the inventor talent. The inventor talent, whose creative results will shift paradigms, is, like the pilot talent, logical and analytical. The difference is that this talent tends to do this processing in the head. Its creative results come in the building of categories, conceptual frameworks, mental maps, and mental models that make everything fit together and that will provide insights that enable discoveries of new solutions. Scientists, architects like Frank Lloyd Wright, philosophers like Ayn Rand or Kant and Nietzsche would access this talent when they created their designs and frameworks for better understanding. This talent will take a very logical, analytical approach to problems and innovation, asking questions about models to use to analyze the challenge and possible solutions. Their leadership style is going to be quietly forceful or directing. And one challenge for the people with this talent is that they can cause you to see the world in black and white or either or perspective, and most creative solutions really require a both and approach. The other challenge that inventors tend to have, or those with the inventor talent, is they tend to keep their decisions in their head and then just sort of provide them at the very end of the decision-making process. Now, if you enjoy organizing people to achieve common goals, you probably prefer the diplomat talent. As a collaborative negotiator, this talent focuses on working with others to achieve common goals and build a strong team. The creative results of leaders with the diplomat talent can be seen in the way they deal with political problems that inevitably come up in implementing creative ideas. They're great at selling solutions, working with others to get an innovation or a change adopted. Another critical and often overlooked aspect of the creative process. So they make their creative contributions in that way, and also in providing a safe place for others to share their ideas. They'll want to know how a new product or solution will affect others, users, or other stakeholders. Individuals identified as caring or inspired leaders use this talent, such as Eleanor Roosevelt, Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, or Nelson Mandela. When it comes to leading, individuals who prefer the diplomat talent will lean towards the enabling side of the spectrum, building consensus around possible solutions. And a challenge for this talent is that they tend to prefer harmony to conflict, and getting ideas in the creative process, getting ideas on the table often results in a lot of conflict. Now, if you indicated that when making decisions, you tend to let your personal values and ideals guide you, then you probably prefer the poet talent. Through its thoughtful counsel of creativity, this talent will provide an ethical background which can remind others to reflect and focus on what is truly important. It will also help you provide a safe space when it comes to developing creative solutions and incubating the ideas. Examples of this talent include Emily Dickinson, Anita Roddick, the founder of the Body Shop, and Tom Chappell, who founded Tom's of Maine, and other socially responsible leaders. The poet talent will generally ask questions about the people involved, how the possible solutions fit in with the company's or the team's values, what's really important. Its concern for people will often cause it to pause when considering the impact a change or innovation might have on others. Its leadership style is quietly enabling, and one possible area to watch out for with this talent is a stubborn inability to see points of view that contradict its values and ideals. So, did you find a decision-making talent that you prefer? Again, if we're still struggling with that, we can hopefully answer those in the Q&A session. So remember that we have all the talents within us. You just tend to develop certain preferences for one decision-making talent and one data-collecting talent when we go about producing creative results. Now that I've described these talents, how do you feel about your own creativity? Has this framework and the 8 creative talents helped see you and yourself as a more creative individual? Again, you're going to only choose one. Are you more sure of your creativity than ever? Do you realize you're much more creative than you first thought? Do you have a better appreciation for your creativity, but you still have to learn a lot? Or are you still not sure? Hopefully, the framework has opened up your eyes, but if you're still not sure, as we are going to find out in just one moment, several of you are more sure. You still have, others have better appreciation, but still lots to learn. And a few said, I realize I'm much more creative than I first thought. Well, this is great. If you're still not sure or want to learn more, this is why I developed the 16-item Breakthrough Creativity Profile and Workshop to help those who need to go into more depth identify their talents. Since finding your own creative identity and your own creative talents is so critical in today's world, I might suggest that you purchase an individual participant guide to learn how you are creative and to explore the breakthrough creativity approach in more detail. Now that you have a better appreciation of the different creative talents and their results, I'd like to share with you some possible next steps for developing more creative leaders in your organization, whether you're coaching leaders or as part of a leadership development program. Be sure that leaders and organizers appreciate all the different creative strengths and the contributions of the creative talents and those of all the different talents. Remember that we are all creative and that there are many different ways, no one best or ideal way to produce different and valuable results, the real definition of creativity. Too often these programs focus on only one type of creativity, so it's important that any new leadership development programs have an awareness of the creative strengths and of all different people. Make sure the organizational culture truly appreciates and rewards the different variations in creative contributions, and that senior leaders really are open to questioning that also that organizational processes don't hamper creativity and innovation. Sometimes you'll have a culture where the top leaders will say, yes, we want more creativity and innovation, and then their first answer to a question or to an idea is, no, we can't do it that way. Or you have a culture where different departments don't talk to each other, which is not a very supportive and motivating culture for creativity and innovation. Make sure that all your programs provide a variety of role models. Leaders who are performing at their creative best don't have to be standout models or highly successful entrepreneurs. They can be ordinary team leaders who have found a new way to work together, a new solution for customers, a new process that saves time. And finally, be sure that development programs include action learning projects where leaders have to deal with ambiguous situations, but that are real problems that the organization is facing, but still ambiguous situations, and have to experiment and work with others with different talents on an action learning team. Action learning projects are key to getting more creative leaders. So speaking of teams, I'd like to add just a word about creativity on teams. Mining the creative potential of a team calls for more than just putting individuals together on a project. For a team's creativity to blossom and turn great ideas into new and valuable results, a team needs to recognize and honor the contribution of the different perspectives that the creative talents of each member bring to the team. Understanding a team's breakthrough creativity profile, the sum of all the talent profiles of team members, will help the team reach higher levels of creativity. Knowledge of the team's profile can also help the team develop strategies for dealing with challenges that a particular mix of talents or lack of talents may present. Excuse me. For example, a team with members who favor the diplomat talent might be averse to conflict, which is needed to get all ideas on the table. Or one with a predominantly pilot talent might be in a rush to get to results without generating sufficient options. I worked with a team that was predominantly pilots, and within 15 minutes they had solutions to the problem that was supposed to take 6 months. Well, we had to get them back on the table to see let's generate some more different ideas. Teams, as one of the interesting issues is that the audience today has a higher preference for the diplomat talent, which means that you can be afraid of conflict on the team, but you'll walk away with great friends. Or finally, a team that favors the navigator talent might be stuck with coming up with great ideas for the future. Or adventurers will have a lot of fun, but may never get anything done. Understanding the talents can also help the team improve its ability to give honest feedback, because the talents supply an easy language to talk about challenges and different perspectives. You can say, gee, that's a great diplomat approach to something. Let's think about how a pilot might think about that. The talents can also serve as a tool, like the 6 hats, to generate new ideas and perspectives. Awareness of the team's creative talents and any holes that might exist can thus help the team break through to more powerful interactions and positive creative results, and have some fun along the way. I feel so strongly about creativity in individuals and on teams that I've developed profiles and workshops for individuals to identify their favorite talents. And now we have a technique for team members to identify their team profile and help them achieve greater results. So I don't like to leave without giving you a chance to make some plans to do something with the information that you've heard. So take a minute to jot down what you can do today or first thing tomorrow morning to further develop your own creativity as a leader. Just one step you can take. That might include strengthening your favorite talent, or accessing a talent you don't use very often, or easing back on your favorite talent. Or maybe there's something you want to do with your team, or with your clients, or with your organization. Or is there anything you can do to integrate creativity into your leadership development programs? I wish we had more time to spend on planning, but we need to move on so we can get to your questions and answers. The power of creativity is awesome, and I hope I've gotten that across today. Developing creative confidence can lead to increased ability to handle challenges and build more resilience, flexibility, and buoyancy for coping with constant change. It'll help you address the skills of problem solving, creative thinking, critical thinking, people management, and decision making. A leader's talent can help him or her weather any storm. Seeing oneself as creative is thus vital for a healthy and productive life, as well as vital and critical for dealing with the challenges ahead. Through introducing you to the Breakthrough Creativity Framework and the 8 creative talents, and helping you better understand the many different ways to be creative and to appreciate the impact of creativity on a leader's ability to face challenges. I hope I have given you some valuable new perspectives so that you can see the incredibly magical world of creativity with new eyes. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Lynn. That was awesome. Awesome. We have a lot of people asking some questions right now, so I'm going to give them just a few more minutes to go ahead and put in your questions. While you do that, I will talk about this special attendee offer that I mentioned earlier in the webinar. So here's your coupon code that you can go use over at HRDQstore.com for Breakthrough Creativity. It's originally $187. It's now only $140 with your special offer. There's a handout in your handouts tab that kind of lays out all these details. You can go ahead and download those. This is only good for 2 weeks. So I'm going to send you an email next week, and then I'm going to send you an email on the last day, just so you don't forget about this awesome deal that we have going on for you. If you have any questions, there's a customer service phone number on the handout that you can use if you have any questions and get more information on the product. So it's a great deal. All right, let's move on to questions and answers. Lynn, let me see what I have coming in. Someone said, let me see, there was a good one. She was saying that she was two different types. So can people cross the various profiles based on their audience, participants, and the topics being discussed? And that came from Pam.
Yes, one of the issues with the talents, as opposed to the MBTI or other profiles, is that the questions are specifically focused on the situation. And obviously circumstances, the development of your own development along the path towards greater self-development can affect your results. There's no question about it. It is a situational situation. Sorry. Next question.
Next question. How do you cultivate a culture of creativity throughout all levels of the workforce? That came from Carla.
Oh, well, Carla, that is a topic of another webinar, because there are many different aspects to creating a culture of innovation. There's issues around, the top leaders' style and the way that trickles down into the organization. It has to do with rewards. It has to do with the company's or an organization's goals and objectives. It has to do with the way that the organization is structured. It's a very complicated complicated way of answering that simple question. Sorry, and it would really be the topic of another seminar. I might provide a couple of links for anybody when we follow up, Asia, with the questions next week. I can provide some links for people to study this issue of culture better.
Absolutely. That sounds like a plan. Next question. What are your thoughts about the relationship of creativity and empowerment? That came from Deborah.
Another topic of that's a complicated answer. I think, I'm not quite sure, I'm not an expert on empowerment and how I know it's a motivational, an area of greater motivation, but I think we put ourselves into narrower boxes than any organization or system does to us. So I have a slightly different take on empowerment. I think we, as creative individuals, can seize more power than we are willing to and take more responsibility, because some of us are afraid of our creativity, or some of us don't know how we are creative. And the minute you start thinking of yourself as creative, you'll start thinking about, I can solve that problem. I can do this. I can do this. And so empowerment, is sort of a two-edged sword here.
Okay, the next question from Stephanie. How can you apply creativity if you have to if you have to 5 factual and straightforward results? That depends on the inputs of others, question mark?
I'm not quite sure I understand all of that, but I think, putting together a team to answer these problems, and let's back up here. There are times when creativity is not required. That you have, for example, I've often heard the example of if there's a nuclear power plant breakdown, you don't necessarily want to be, or maybe you will have to be more creative if you can't understand the situation, but the shutdown process is a set process and you want to go follow it and you don't want to be off not doing what you're supposed to do. But most other situations are open to more creativity, and we just need to find ways to bring together a team. It really is a lot about team building and a lot about using the information about the creative talents to build great teams that can address small problems as well as big problems. I mean, I think one of the things we have to remember is that creativity can be used on small projects, small problems, as well as big ones.
Yep. Mary asked, how does the right brain and left brain theory of creativity fit into this?
Well, thank you for asking that question, Mary. Neuroscientists are now finding that theory of right brain and left brain when it comes to creativity is not really holding up against the evidence. First of all, I'm not sure what the definition of creativity it was that generated that model. But when you think of creativity as the ability to consciously produce different and valuable results, you'll find that you need the whole brain to come up with creative contributions. It's not, it's a whole brain kind of thing. You've got to be able to sense issues. You've got to be able to make decisions. You've got to use imagination. So you need your whole brain. And neuroscientists are basically finding that, again, depending upon the definition of creativity. I hope that answers Mary's question.
Mm-hmm. We have probably time for one more. Mark asked, in this definition of creativity, how does innovation fit in?
Well, I think, again, we go back to the issue of definitions. In my definition, creativity is a personal characteristic. It's something people have, and innovation is something that organizations do. But again, I think one of the ideas that I would like to leave you with is that when you hear somebody talk about creativity or talk about innovation, ask them for how are they defining those terms? Because I think when I was doing my research, I would find people who thought innovation is something that has to do with finding results and creativity is more brainstorming. Well, I think we found that that's not necessarily the case, and that, at least in my definition and the Breakthrough Creativity Profile and the framework, the definition is much broader, and it encompasses both coming up with the ideas and putting them into practice. And so I think that the key to take away from this is to make sure you get the definition of creativity and innovation when you're talking about it with people.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lynn. I think you did a great job answering all those questions. We had a lot of them today. There are still a few that haven't been answered, so Lynn is going to take some time. She's heading to France tomorrow, so sometime next week she's going to take some time, answer those questions, and we're going to get those back out to you. I see a lot of people have some questions regarding the product and if there's different versions, and we will go ahead and adjust those as well outside of this presentation. So thank you, Lynn. It was a pleasure having you here today.
Well, thank you, Asia, and thanks to everyone who attended, and have a great and very creative 2018.
Thank you. We'll see you guys on our next webinar. It's February 7th. It's titled The Well-Connected Employee, Networking Competencies That Foster Engagement, Collaboration, and Business Results. So that's up on HRDQ-U.com right now. You can go ahead and sign up, and we'll see you in February. Bye, guys.